Okay, the next problem on our list is E75. E75 has a lot of calculations that go along with it. None of them are too complex. It's just that some of these problems in Chapter 7 have a lot of calculations, so in order to save some time, I've written some information on the board that's going to help us along as we move along with these calculations. Alright, E75 indicates that this company tracks the number of units purchased and sold throughout each accounting period, but applies its inventory costing method at the end of each month as if it uses a periodic inventory system. The sales totaled 240 units, and the first requirement indicates that it wants us to calculate the number and cost of goods available for sale, right? Okay, so I've written this information for us up on the board. Pretty straightforward for the most part, because they give us all the inputs, right? I have the calculation here for cost of goods available for sale down here. We're going to use this in part 3 of our requirements. But for part 1, it wants to know the number of units and the cost for cost of goods available for sale, right? Well, it gives us a number of units, because here's our calculation right here. Beginning inventory plus net purchases equals cost of goods available for sale. Well, beginning inventory was 120 units, and then we made 2 purchases, 380 and 200. If you add those up, you get 700 units were available for sale, right? These are the number of units that we could sell. If we crossfoot or multiply out their cost, then we take 120 units, which was the beginning inventory, right? And multiply by that price per unit, and I think they even do that for you in the problem, $80 per unit, we get 9,600. And I'm going to go ahead and write this down because we're going to use this in another calculation as we get on to requirement 3. Do the same thing with the first purchase. So we had 380 at $90 a unit, gives us 34,200. And with the last purchase, 200 units at 110 gives us 22,000. If we add these up, we should get 65,800, which I have written up there, right? 65,800. This is our cost of goods available for sale. So this is what we have to sell in terms of cost, right? So there's a difference between price of inventory that the sales price is and the actual cost. And we're looking for the cost here because that's what inventory is carried at, okay? So here's what we can sell. Part 2. Part 2 says we actually do sell 240 units, and it wants to know what ending inventory is. Okay, well, if we sold 240 units, again, these are just numbers that were given to us in the problem, so don't need a whole lot of explanation. But here's what we had available for sale in terms of units. Here's what we actually sold. 460 must be our ending inventory, right? Now, notice we don't calculate the cost of ending inventory. The reason why? That's requirement 3. The cost of ending inventory really depends on which method we intend to use, right? FIFO, LIFO, or weighted average, each one can give us a different cost of goods sold as well as cost of ending inventory, okay? So let's move on to part 3. Part 3 asks us to calculate ending inventory and cost of goods sold under the 3 methods. And this is really the meat of the problem, right? So, in doing this first requirement, we've kind of done the first half of each one of these calculations. Because notice that our equation for cost of goods sold, the cost of goods sold equation, right? It first has us calculate cost of goods available for sale. That's the starting point no matter which method that you're using, right? So you can see that here we've outlined it, beginning inventory plus the purchases equals cost of goods available for sale. But from then on, I've kind of eliminated this portion and just said, okay, here's our starting point. Cost of goods available for sale, 65,800. Same with up here for weighted average, right? So here's our starting point. This is what we could sell. Now we have to indicate what we did sell. FIFO said first in, first out. So the first goods that come in are the first ones to actually be sold, right? Well, it tells us up here in part 2 that we sold 240 units, right? So let's count out 240, starting with the first ones going out first, right? 120 units we sell at $80, so I've written that out here. 120 at 80, and then we still are 120 shy, right? We still need to get to 240, so we take 120 units at $90 a piece, and that gives us our total cost of goods sold, which is $20,400. Then, simply by using our equation, we can subtract that from cost of goods available for sale, and we get $45,400 for our ending inventory. And that's for FIFO. Let's move on to LIFO. LIFO, exact same starting point, except in this time, we start with the last in, first out for cost of goods sold, right? Same starting point, just now the cost of goods sold, though, it changes. Last in are the first ones to be sold. So, again, if we count these backwards, we'll start with the 200 at 110, so 200 at 110, right? And then we still are 40 shy, so we'll take 40 out of the 91, 40 for the 90, we should get 25 45,600, right? That's our cost of goods sold. Take that out. For ending inventory, we should get 40,200. And that's LIFO. For weighted average, we have one step before we can calculate what cost of goods sold is. We first have to determine what the price per unit is, right? Because weighted average says that we take a mixture between FIFO and LIFO. In order to get weighted average, we take the total cost of goods available for sale and then divide 700 into that amount, right? That should give us a price of $94 per unit, right? So we take the 65,800 divided by the 700 and it gives us 94 per unit. All right, so that's our price per unit, okay? So if we multiply out 240, which is the amount that we sold, right, by the $94 per unit, then we should get 22,560. Subtract the cost of goods sold from the ending inventory, we should get 43,240. Okay, this is E75. Please let me know if you have any questions.